going? I'm back on the moon, but this time I'm here for a very important reason. We're doing all sorts of experiments. You can see all the equipment around everywhere. We've got to be really careful. We're collecting moon rocks and samples and doing lots of experiments. And there's lots of people working on this, which is great because we are all working as a team together, which is important, just like a class. You've all got to work together, don't you? So I am back here to read a story to you, which I love this book so much. And it's called The Spacesuit. And of course, we have read it before, but there's no limit on how often we can read books, are there? Definitely not. And this is a great story because it's a true story. And I love all these space books that we've been reading, and especially these inspiring stories about people that kept trying and trying and they never gave up, and they worked together in a team for the common good of getting man on the moon or whatever their purpose was. They always had a purpose, working together to do something, just like the scientists that work on the moon and in space now in the International Space Station. They're amazing. There's people from Russia and Japan and America, and there's all sorts of people all working together doing these experiments. So I love these stories of where there's people working as a community, the space community. The spacesuit, how a seamstress helped put man on the moon. So far, only 12 people have walked on the moon, apart from astronaut Traynor, of course. That makes it 13. It took the Apollo astronauts 3 days to get to the moon and 3 days to get back. It's very, very hot on the moon in the sunlight and very, very cold in the shade. So of course they had to think about these things when they were designing the spacesuit. And it's 21 layers, the spacesuit. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin spent 2 hours and 32 minutes on the moon testing out the suits and other equipment. Apollo astronauts said that moon dust, which stuck to their suits, smelled like gunpowder. I wonder if I've got it on mine. Oh, I hope not. Each Apollo astronaut had 3 custom fitted suits each, one for flight, one for training, and one as a flight backup. So the inspiration behind this book is a lady called Ellie Foraker, and she's an American lady who worked for a company for 43 years. And she actually wasn't just part of designing the spacesuit for the moon, but she's actually been part of lots of other space initiatives, putting landing bags for Mars missions. She has designed other spacesuits. She makes gas masks, underground inflatable oil tanks. She's done lots of amazing things, this lady. So she's a little bit like, I think, Dorothy Vaughan and Katherine Johnson for me, that I'm finding these stories of these people so inspirational. And they worked really hard at school, so they did well. And they had these dreams of working in space. This is Ellie. Ellie helped change the world with a needle and thread many years ago. Ellie loved to design and sew from a young age. As a child, she felt her fingers come alive the first time she used a sewing machine. She threaded the needle and pressed the foot pedal. 3, 2, 1, blast off. The sewing machine launched her into another universe. I wonder if any of you can sew. I love sewing. I used to sew all my own clothes when I was a teenager. Where fabric could be tucked and tapered, the whir of the machine filled her imagination with ideas. With hard work, any design was possible. As an adult, Ellie got a job sewing clothes for women and babies. Ellie worked quickly and carefully. Her seams were straight and her stitching was neat. An engineer noticed and asked her a question. A really great question. Who does that remind you of? How would you like to sew spacesuits instead? Ellie couldn't believe her ears. Yes, I would love to. If we win, our spacesuit will go to the moon. Ellie worked for a company called ILC Dover. Ellie's workplace had entered an exciting competition at the last minute, but it wasn't going to be easy. That's good, isn't it? To have a challenge. We don't want things to be too easy. It wasn't unusual for this industry to try new things. In World War I, they designed flight suits for pilots. Big teams of military designers and engineers were also competing. Ellie's team was small, and they only had 6 weeks. Many believed that seamstresses could never win, but Ellie ignored them and set to work. She never gave up. Thankfully, Ellie had help. She worked with Lenny and his team of engineers. Some engineers were so impressed with the women's sewing that they asked if the seamstresses could teach them how to sew. The seamstresses also shared ideas about how to best make the suit. Ellie looked up old spacesuits. They're hard, like armour. Can we make something softer and more comfortable? And this suit is very comfortable. So when I'm walking on the moon, it's very comfortable. The answer was yes. The plan was to make a spacesuit with many soft layers. No one has made a spacesuit like this before. The pressure helmet, which is very important, and this is real gold, by the way. Oxygen outlet, very important. Spacesuits must protect astronauts from heat and be flexible so they can walk on the moon. The spacesuit will have lots of thin layers, like an onion. I like that. There's lots of layers to an onion, isn't there? Nylon layer, glove layers. Let's get to work. Working together. The common good, remember? The seamstresses worked from dawn until dusk. The stitching was slow, and if they made a mistake, it could be very costly. As the suits got bulkier, the seamstresses complained. The suits got so bulky that the seamstresses had trouble feeding them through their sewing machines. 2 gigantic sewing machines appeared. The ladies named them Sweet Sue and Big Mo. Fact: the seamstresses had to sew within 1/64th of an inch. That is the width of a pin. So you know how very, very thin a pin is? That was the width of it. Ellie stitched late into the night with Lenny helping by her side. As the competition drew near, the women were exhausted, but everyone pulled together. The women sewed and glued layer after layer until they had, do you remember that number? 21 layers. Finally, the A7L spacesuit was created. The suits were tested and rushed off to Texas for judging. When the seamstresses were so proud of the spacesuit that some of them signed their names on the inside. I might have a signed initial there as well. The judges noticed a broken zipper. Ellie and her team were given 12 hours to fix it and return it to the judges. The suit made it just in time with help from an aeroplane. After many tests, the results were in. The first competitor's suit failed because the helmet blew off. Oh dear. The spacesuits were tested to ensure that they could keep the astronauts safe on the moon. The second competitor's suit failed because it was too wide to fit in the space capsule. Who was doing the measurements? My goodness, you would think that would have been something that they considered. Can we get this suit that is so bulky into this capsule? Lastly, the A7L spacesuit was named the winner. Comfortable, heat resistant, light enough to walk on the moon. Because of course they had to remember that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin did have to be able to walk in this suit, and if they fell, they had to be able to get back up again. So there were lots of things to consider. On July 20th, 1969, when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon, Ellie and her team were nervous. But when she saw them pick up moon rocks and return to the capsule safely, Ellie knew the suits were perfect, and they are perfect. So if I just lean down here and do a bit of, it's amazing touching this, it's quite powdery. Ellie's heart swelled with pride. Imagine, she must have felt so proud of herself, her whole team. The universe seemed smaller that night. The Earth and the Moon felt woven together by invisible thread. Stitch by stitch, layer by layer, the A7L spacesuit had changed the world forever. Ooh, I haven't seen this. It says, scan the QR code to find out more. I'll have to do that, and if I find some information, I'll put it on a slide for us to look at tomorrow. I just love these stories. Very few pins were used in the making of this spacesuit. A puncture in the suit could risk an astronaut's life. Many of the stitches in the spacesuit had to be done by hand. Some parts of the spacesuit were made from a similar liquid latex material that was used to make other items of clothing. The A7L was the name of the spacesuit that Ellie worked on. A was for Apollo, NASA's name for the moon mission. 7 was for the generation of the suit, and L was for ILC latex. One of the hardest tests of the suit was whether you could stand back up if you fell over. So I won't do that now. I don't want to fall over and then try and get back up again. An X-ray machine was used to double check that no pins were left behind in the suits. What a great story. I hope you're inspired by these stories. I love reading about all these amazing stories of people that just ordinary everyday people that ended up being a part of history, changing the world. You're all capable of doing the same thing. You're all awesome. Thanks. Have a great day. I'm off to do some more experiments. You know, I've got lots of things to do here on the moon. And I've got to make it back in time for our Google Meet. Oh, better hurry up and finish with my experiments. Takes me 3 days to get back. Bye, everybody.